Association and Museum in Richfield Springs. We're located at 134 Main Street in Richfield Springs, New York. It's the Gladstone Building. It used to be a jewelry shop, and now it's a museum. This presentation was originally put together by Donald Ertz and Harriet Witt. Harriet is the Village of Richfield Springs historian. She's also the RSHA's museum's president. Donald Ertz is the Richfield Springs Historical Association's treasurer. I'm the secretary. And with that, we'll get started. Today's presentation is about the Garden of the Mills. So, greetings from Richfield Springs. We'll begin our stroll from the center of the village, head north up Church Street, continue just past the county line, where we will then be in the area that was once known as Freeman's Mills, the Weatherby Mills, and then the world-renowned artist colony called the Garden of the Mills. Montgomery Crossing on Route 167 and Millstone Road. Before we can try to visualize what was once there, we need to step back even further in history to about 1786, when Isaac Freeman, a revolutionary soldier from New Jersey, came to establish a home. He was a thrifty, hardworking man, and he had the keen foresight to realize that pioneers who were pushing into the western frontier following the war would need lumber for homes and flour and grains for their families. In 1793, he built the first gristmill and sawmill. The settlement became known as Freeman Mills. Isaac Freeman died at the age of 71 in 1824. And you've got to remember that at this time, we were the western frontier. We were the edge of civilization. We were the first Wild West. Also, at about this time, a man named Lucius Weatherby was settling at Page's Corners. Page's Corners is better known as Cullen today. Just up the road a little bit. He built a tannery business there, which he carried on with his son Alvin, who had purchased the gristmill of James Page at this location. Alvin's son Brayton continued on with the milling and tanning profession. About 1858, the Weatherbys bought out Freeman and combined the two businesses into what they then became known as the Weatherby Mills. All of the equipment at Page's Corners, including the machinery, stonemasonry, and buildings, were moved to the new mill location. It was to become one of the most prosperous centers in New York for milling, sawing, and tanning. Extensive improvements in the Freeman buildings were made, adding new machinery and building a 3-story tannery at the rear of the gristmill. Freeman's former home was moved across the road, and the large Weatherby family home was built on the edge of the 2 ponds which supplied the water power for their mills. They had no problem moving buildings way back when. They thought nothing of it. It could be 3-4 stories, and they would just decide to move it. They'd put it on big old lawns and move it all across town. That's way more common than you might think it was. You would recognize this house as the Millstone Tavern. It's now a private home. The road did not run the same course that it does today. The gristmill stood nearest the road. It had 4 run of stone and was reported to have one of the largest water wheels in the state. The mill ground at least 50,000 bushels annually and was famous for the fine quality of its products. It specialized in buckwheat flour, but gram flour, cornmeal, and other types of feed were also produced in quantity. The sawmill was located to the south of the gristmill, and it was reported that on an average of 20,000 feet of lumber was cut annually. Brayton A. Weatherby was in charge of the enterprise. He is credited with inventing. Oh, yes, skip pictures. Forgot to elbow him. Yeah, this is the crossing. That's the Weatherby Mills and Tannery. This is the Weatherby Mills. Another photo of the Weatherby House. The millstone, which I just mentioned. An advertisement from February 1892. All right, okay, we're good. Brayton A. Weatherby was in charge of the enterprise. He is credited with inventing a hop picking machine, which became popular for the lucrative hop industry. The hop were Otsego County's leading industry at the time. He also invented a stone picking machine. Brayton served on the board of directors for the First National Bank of Richfield. His son Willard was in charge of the grist mill, and another son, Elias, was in charge of the tannery. The tannery was flourishing during the Civil War period, employing 30 or more men working on government contracts to furnish leather for shoes for the army. Bark was used to tan hides, and it was common to find the discarded soft tan bark used for sidewalks in the area. Despite all these apparently successful business ventures, his heavy investment in the tannery, which ceased operating in the 1890s, brought about his financial ruin. Brayton had died in 1895, and in 1897, Weatherby Mills and the land of 250 acres was up for sale. The property had an unwanted notoriety in 1885 when the axe used by Roxana Drews to finish the disposal of her murdered husband was found, rolled in paper at the bottom of Weatherby Pond. So the murder weapon was found in Weatherby Pond. Next slide. Next slide. Yes.
What were those?
Those were the inventions that Brayton invented. Yeah, the patents. Now Richard Malcolm Montgomery enters into our picture. This is the handsome Richard Malcolm Montgomery. A native of South Bergen, New Jersey, he was born on December 19th, 1853, the son of John Robb Montgomery and Jane Malcolm Ball Montgomery. John Robb was a prominent tea merchant who had his business at 127 Water Street in the city. Of Scotch-Irish descent, Richard's earliest American ancestor was Jane Montgomery of Belfast, Ireland. Richard attended House Rock Institute in New Jersey, leaving his schooling when he was 14 years of age to engage in the business life. He entered the tea business, where he remained for 12 years, gaining valuable experience. In 1893, he entered the real estate arena as a broker and was successful in organizing many large syndicates for purchases of resale of Manhattan Island property. In 1900, his business office was located at 61 Pine Street in New York City, and his residence was at 372 First Avenue. His ads informed those interested that he was a broker and auctioneer with a specialty of downtown real estate, complete management of properties and estates with appraisements of building and lands. As his business grew, Richard invested himself in several pieces of property in New York City and the Manhattan area. He was a Republican in politics and a member of the City Club of New York City, the New York Zoological Society, the Civil Service Reform Association, the Society of the Sons of the American Revolution, the Westchester Country Club, and the Mendelssohn Glee Club, the Riding Club, and then once he came to the Richfield area, any number of organizations here. Richard was the great-great-grandson of Colonel William Malcolm, who was the commander of the 2nd New York Infantry in 1776. That would be who that is. He first married Alice Stanley Coe in 1778. Her father was at one time president of the American Bankers Association. They had 5 sons. Richard Jr., born in 1879. George Coe, born in 1880, but he only lived 1 month. John Robb, born in 1882. Stanley Coe, born in 1884, who died at the age of 2, so they lost 2 children. And Francis Stewart, born in 1886. His second marriage was to Maud McFarland in Washington, D.C., January 1903. They had no offspring. As was common in the era known as the Age of Elegance, the Montgomery family came to spend some time in the summer away from the heat of the noisy city. They had a summer home in Cooperstown, and it is said that after staying in the area, he became taken by its charm and beauty. Ever the businessman, when the opportunity was available to purchase land here, he was eager to do so. In April of 1901, representatives of the Richfield, Mohawk, and Cooperstown National Banks decided to sell at auction the Weatherby property, which was then owned by the 3 banks. For a while, it wasn't really used. It was divided into 6 or 7 parcels, one including the house, a trout pond, 10 acres of land which was described as making a very desirable summer residence for Clubhouse. The gristmill and tannery were to be sold separately, with the remaining land to be offered in 3 or 4 parcels to suit purchasers. Mr. Montgomery purchased it all, envisioning a brilliant future for his investments on the outskirts of the famous summer resort, which was then at the height of its popularity. His dream was to provide the hub of social gatherings for the artists and wealthy spa patrons. For those of you that don't know, Richfield Springs was a spa town. The sulfur baths were medicinal, and clientele from New York City, Philadelphia, all over the place, Boston, rich people would come to stay in Richfield Springs at one of the 14 hotels. There were multiple bathhouses, and you could use the sulfur waters to treat arthritis, rheumatism, and a number of ailments. It was big business. It was really popular. Like they were saying, like at that time, it was booming. In 1903, he also bought the Jerome Crim Farm, which neighbored his other holdings, completely remodeling and enlarging the home and barns. This served as the family summer home referred to as Malcolm Lodge, and was located on what was then called Montgomery Road. Now we call it Millstone Road. The lodge consisted of 24-room manor houses, with stables located across the road with impressive entrance gates and beautiful landscaping. Fire of suspicious origins leveled the old mansion in February 1951. The stables have long since been turned into a private home. That's the beautiful gate. While we're in the neighborhood, let's visit the Wyandotte Hunt and Golf Club. Started in 1897, just east of Malcolm Lodge, there were bi-weekly runs with full packs of hounds were offered. Ample facilities were offered for the care and training of jumpers. The clubhouse was reported to have been metamorphosized from a cozy farmhouse in a still cozier clubhouse and became a rendezvous for Richfield society. Receptions and teas were held in the afternoon. The golf links were admirably arranged and were the scene of several interesting matches, including those of women interested in the sport. 9 caddies were kept busy at the links, and a professional instructor was available to teach beginners the technicalities of the play. In 1900, tennis courts were also available. They were covered with clay, thoroughly rolled, and reported to be excellent. Mr. Robert Taller and J. Lee Taller were in charge of the property. And I bet that one of their favorite comments was that they had 138 employees at the golf club. Of course, the employees they were referring to were the flock of sheep that Mr. Taller had purchased in 1898 to do double duty as self-working lawnmowers and furnishing picturesque views of the landscape. You're the sheep.
Yep.
Hey. In 1913, if you wish to join, there's the sheep. In 1913, if you wish to join the club, the membership rates were $25. A season ticket was $15. Ladies were $7.50. Monthly for men was $10. Weekly for men $5, with a day rate of $1. In August of 1913, the barn burned to the ground. Fortunately, everything inside the building was saved except for the hay, and the men stationed on the roof of the clubhouse were able to extinguish sparks as they fell by the wind. In 1916, the club was incorporated under the new name of the Richfield Springs Country Club, the sale having been made from the estate of Cornelia Roberts. The group was active in the 1940s. The clubhouse is now a private home. It does still exist. I drove by it the other day. It's on Millstone Road. I guess it was originally the Ward family farm, and it's kind of hard to tell, but it definitely does still exist. We've got pictures of the clubhouse, and if you look at the door of the modern house, you can tell it's the same door. It's just they put a porch over it, so it's kind of hard to see from the road.
Amanda, that picture is of what?
It's the first clubhouse. It used to be the Ward family farm.
Okay.
Like this door here, when you look at the house today, you can still see that door, so you can tell it's the house. But now it's got a huge real porch, not just an awning. Yep. Montgomery increased his holdings as more land became available, including in 1907 the Sunset Hill property and several lots in the village. Sunset Hill is on the National Historic Register. The building that's there currently was built in like 1926. But Mr. Montgomery owned that property at one point too. In August of 1907, he purchased a large number of lots at auction from the estate of Edmund A. Ward. Those included were all of those on the north side of Main Street and 3 on the south side, paying $600 for the 4 acres of land in the rear of the Richfield Hotel, $600 for the lot adjoining the hotel on the west, the area where the school stands today, $520 for each of the next two, $515 for each of the next two, $525 for each of the next two, $625 for each of the next two, $500 for each of the next two, $470 for each of the two west of Freidenberg's, which was the blacksmith and carriage shop business on the west of Main Street. $575 each for the 3 west of T.F. Hinn's residence on the south side. You could pretty much say he pretty much owned all of West Main Street at one point. Like even the land he purchased from Mr. Ward, that was like a huge chunk of property. Eventually, Mr. Ward's land was purchased by St. John's Episcopal Church, and Ward's family home is the funeral home today. So we're talking all around, there. All right. So, when Thomas R. Proctor wished to donate a library building to the village, Richard Montgomery donated the land on which to build it. So T.R. Proctor donated the library, Richard Montgomery donated the land. The abattoir on which the golf links were located was sold at a private sale before the auction to a New York City lady for $10,000, and she assured that it would continue to be a golf ground. She requested at the time that her name be withheld. Mr. Montgomery had a great interest in the world of art and music and in the betterment of the Richfield area. Many of his associates were important personages in the world of art. This certainly influenced his dream of creating an artist colony at the old mill site. He enlarged and remodeled the Weatherby House in 1904 with great fireplaces and 110 electric lights. A large south porch was added and the grounds landscaped. In 1907, he had new golf grounds created on a large lot east and south, using the Weatherby House as a clubhouse. Listen. His brochure said that it was to be the place. His brochure said that it was to be a place where the leading landscape painters of the country would gather and live together to discuss the internal laws of beauty. And so he began work on fulfilling his dream by hiring a well-known engineer and landscape architect from New York, Mr. Nathan F. Barrett, to carry out his plan. The beginning cost was nearly $50,000, an extravagant amount of money at the time. Mr. Barrett had gained importance when he was asked to lay out the grounds of the 1893 Chicago School Fair. His designs were done to show that the possibilities of combining sculpture with flowers and plants in both natural and formal gardens. Montgomery continued to make additions and improvements, which resulted in the area being most popular for patrons of the village to stroll over to the golf links and back by the way of the Garden of the Mills, which presented a most charming combination of nature and the work of man. It was reported in August of 1902 that the work was rapidly progressing on the garden. The scope of the plans for the estate was large, and the many natural advantages of the place, especially the abundance of water, were fully utilized. Among the radical changes listed would be the transformation of the tannery into an old-time inn. This idea was to form a place of amusement and recreation for Richfield's visitors. Now there's some pictures of the garden so that you could see, what it looked like. That was the old tannery building in the background. You can see how they used all the water to make waterfalls and fountains. There were still ponds, like the rustic trout ponds. You can see your garden, Grecian fountain. They incorporated the ruins into the garden, like anything that was ruined, they kind of left, and because that was popular at the time. Like if you were in Europe, you would have had an ancient Roman ruin, but here we were, not that far from colonial times. So it was like the colonial things can be our ruins. Another view of the garden. Another view of the country club. Some of the arches still exist. I don't think it's these ones. More waterfalls.
When you drive by, you have no idea that that was ever there.
It was big, strong.
Yeah, I know.
Another waterfall. A lagoon. Now we moved on. The Montgomery family always proved generous in their contribution to local causes. One of the favorites was the Good Road Association. Now I've got some newspaper clippings so that you don't have to just trust our word for it. You can hear it from like the Richfield Springs Mercury, the Richfield Springs Daily, the Freeman's Journal, all of the papers that were around at the time. September 1902. There was a sound of revelry by night in the garden of the mills. From whence the sound came was the scene of an unusual and highly enjoyable affair. Much has been said and written concerning the transformation that Richard Montgomery has made in the old Weatherby property, and of the skillful work of his landscape gardener, N.F. Barrett of New York. But the picture last evening at the time of the dance for the benefit of the Good Road Association was a revelation. The grounds surrounding the old tannery and sawmill, as the approach was made over the hill, presented a scene of a fairyland with rows of electric lights and Japanese lanterns lighting the miniature lakes. Rustic bridges and winding walks and the beauty of moonlight intensified the effect. August 1903. Extensive preparations are being made for an entertaining evening's amusement at the Garden of the Mills on Wednesday evening. The Richfield Springs Band will give a concert from 4 to 5:30 under the direction of Mr. August Marrow. In the evening, there will be extensive fireworks under the management of A.D. Bierman. Dancing will be from 9 to 11. Refreshment will be served. Tickets have been placed on sale at the boarding houses and at Hyde's bookstore. My own little side note, Hyde's bookstore was in the Gladstone building, and the Richfield Springs Historical Association Museum is also in the Gladstone building. The admission charge of 50 cents will go towards the Good Roads Fund, a subject in which every resident of Richfield and the surrounding country should be deeply interested. If we are desirous and our summer visitors should bring their horses and add to the gaiety of the season, it is necessary that we should provide good roads for their use. Roads were awful. The roads were really, really bad. You think of like a dirt road today, that's beautiful compared to these roads. They had to scrape these roads and spray them down. You were lucky if you lived someplace that had a plank road. Most roads were not anything close to like what the roads are today. And cobblestones were not they weren't happening in the country. You might have had them downtown or something like Herkimer had cobblestones at one point, but out in the country you didn't have cobblestones. Back to the events. This event was reported in the Society News of the New York Times as the country frolic where guests would be carried in coaches and tally-hoes to a brilliant night of entertainment. The tally-hoes were the really fast coaches, like your speed coaches. The Brooklyn Life reported that over the lagoons and canal, electric bulbs of variegated colors shed a bewitching light. From the entrance of the gristmills, views had been between high hedges of paths and canals of water. These vistas suggested the gardens of Florence, as well as the Holland Water Gardens. A Japanese garden is a feature. Cherries served the collation at midnight in a supper room banked with the golden glow, hollyhocks, phlox, and garlands of Richfield sweet peas. The guests included several admirals, a brigadier general, lieutenants, and a countess. Pierre Proctor, the Hyde Clark family, and several other important personages from New York City were also guests. As an indication of how popular the activities of the Garden of the Mills were, we have this notice from 1903. Special cars on the trolley will run between this village and the garden this afternoon and evening as the travel demands, probably every 15 minutes. A side note that's not in here. When they built the trolley, Mr. Montgomery was like, "Hey, you're done with that? Why don't you build me some roads?" And so the Italian workers that worked on the trolley also put roads on his property for him, like after they were done with the trolley. The trolley was like 1903. Let's see. August 1905. Local artists will take part in the entertainment to be given at the Lawn Fete in the garden. A quartet of barnyard screechers will give amusing melodies. A character sketch, recitations, homespun poetry, and a Spanish dance with song will also be presented. Improvements to the landscape and buildings were also made. February 1906. Contractor J.D. Williams is making an estimate of the cost of the new hotel to be erected by Richard Montgomery just north of this village. Plans were made by architect Maurice J. Prevost of Ithaca and are most elaborate in every detail. The intention is to use the immense building formerly known as the Weatherby Tannery. The estimated cost of the project is $80,000. Now, $80,000 in 1906. Mm-hmm. Yeah. July 1906. Richard Montgomery has brought up two fine automobiles from New York. One of them a white steamer. I think that was the picture earlier. The White Motor Company manufactured the steamer in Cleveland, Ohio from 1900 to 1910. August 1906. The attractiveness of the garden has been frequently remarked on by those who take daily walks in that direction. The flowers are now at the height of their beauty. 1907. Mr. Barrett, who laid out the Garden of the Mills, is in town, and it is rumored that Mr. Montgomery will make some extensive additions to this already attractive garden. It is one of the most delightful walks about Richfield to stroll over the golf links and back by the way of the garden. Mr. Barrett has cunningly combined nature and artistry, and his efforts are really unusual. 1908. Richard Montgomery is placing the Garden of the Mills golf links in a prime condition for the season's play. There will be parlors, meeting rooms, dressing rooms, and baths. The building is finely situated amongst the pleasant streams and cascades, and its many charms and conveniences cannot fail to attract golf enthusiasts. 1909. The pink and yellow lotus lilies are in bloom on the lagoons. The whole garden is now in its prime. 1911. Over 1,000 rose bushes have been set out in the garden. New brick arches are being constructed as well. The new brick arches are probably the Italianate arches. One of the Italianate arches still exists. Don't go and check it out. It's private property. In July of 1913, it was reported that the area around the old mill had been completed and was a fairyland of flower-lined paths, ponds of lilies, waterfalls, and fountains. The old sawmill and tannery had been turned into pleasure spots. The transformation was directed by New York artist Leon Dabo. The sawmill was turned into an artist studio with housekeeping facilities to accommodate up to 40 people. Now dancers could trip the light fantastic, where once the heavy boot of the laborer trod. His brochure stated that this is probably the only outdoor garden in the United States where the human figure can be painted under those conditions of privacy, either a classical or a natural background. When the First World War started, Mr. Montgomery tried to attract the many landscape artists who had been accustomed to going to Europe annually. Loss of interest in the curative powers of Bath, easier travel allowing for greater distances to be easily accessible, and concerns over the economy caused the beginning of the downfall of the Age of Elegance. Through the war years, all activity ceased, and by the end of that period, Richfield's star as a summer watering place had fallen. Now, Mr. Montgomery was not without troubles in maintaining his land. In 1918, the Mercury carried the following ad. A reward of $25 will be paid for the arrest and conviction of the person or persons who cut down about 12 trees in the Garden of the Mills adjoining the Herkimer Trolley Railroad on July 6. 1921. Prominent residents visiting the garden include Leon Gabo, founder of the world-famous Woodstock Art Colony, William Van Ingen, mural painter who painted the murals in the Chicago courthouse, and Nicholas Scotch, the great Russian portrait painter. Richard Montgomery has established at the Garden of the Mills an art colony bearing his name. Appreciating the fact that a truly national school of landscape painting can only evolve if the beauty and charm of our own atmosphere, our own hills and valleys, and of our light are studied and developed. He is supplying at the Garden of the Mills in the beautiful Otsego County the requirements that painters demand of nature, building studios designed for the needs of a painter and the use of their working tools and living accommodations. The studios have been built under the direction of Mr. Leon Dabo, landscape artist. He has arranged them with a foresight born of experience. Every detail has made this colony an absolute ideal painter's retreat. There are already completed in the sawmill 6 of these studios, simple working spaces each with all the necessary housekeeping facilities. As the colony grows, 15 studios can be built in the grist mill and 20 in the tannery. This is one of the most unique and encouraging painting spots in America. The additional studios, it only got so far. Oh yeah, okay. By the summer of 1922, Montgomery had to give up on his dream, and we find the news items from August of that year. A business transaction of unusual interest was consummated recently with Charles W. Krim, formerly of Utica, and his son Howell D. Krim, who had sold his feed business in Richfield to Frank Booten in 1922. They bought the estate just outside of Richfield Springs, known far and wide as the Garden of the Mills. The valuable property comprises about 250 acres of land on the state road. It is a large farm with 2 spacious residences, barns, 3 cottages, and a beautiful park, which was built with a view to attract the cultured eye. Krim has converted the artist's studio into an unusually attractive dancing pavilion. Workmen have been busy all week tearing out partitions, installing electric lights, and finishing the fine floor. Mr. Krim announced in his new hall to be open on Thursday evening, August 10th, dancing from 8:30 to 1:30, and on Saturday evening, August 13th, dancing from 8:30 to 1. They stayed out late. That's like past my bedtime. Dates of next week's dances will be announced later. The natural setting of the pavilion should assure the success of Mr. Krim's venture, and anything which adds life and zest to Richfield's summer season should be received most cordially by both residents and guests. There are many young people here this year, and it is well known that several of the older couples can dance just as well and get just as much enjoyment out of a good jazz orchestra as the best of them. The completion of the dancing pavilion is the first step towards making the garden and vicinity an ideal little resort. Mr. Krim has already leased his cottages to guests from Utica and New York City. It is planned in time to develop the facilities for trout fishing. Several inquiries have been made as to this, but it will take time and calculation. Mr. Krim is a live wire and may be counted upon to deliver. Garden of the Mills is proving very successful under the capable management of Howell. Moonlight waltzes and shadow foxtrots were novel features of the Saturday night dance. Cheerful fires were lighted in the big cobblestone fireplaces, which were enjoyed by the spectators on the balcony and the dancers alike. It reminded one of a big, cozy home. Curtis's 6-piece orchestra was all that could be desired, while hot dogs, soft drinks, and ice cream served between the dances on the counter and at the tables in the balconies added to the enjoyment of the occasion. The Garden of the Mills is very popular with the young people from throughout the Mohawk Valley. 150 attended the dance last Saturday night, and many expressions of appreciation were heard because of the refinement and high tone of the pavilion and its patrons. 1922. A dance for the benefit of the baseball fund with the music by Curtis and his syncopators will be given. Bill $1.25. Additional for extra ladies. Howell Krim has generously donated the use of the garden and mills for this affair. And if the public shows the same spirit in patronizing the dance, the Athletic Association will be able to square all its accounts. The boys are providing good sports here and should be loyally supported. Many who cannot or will not attend the dance should buy a ticket. Let's put it across with a big addition to the baseball fund. September 1923. So successful was Howell Krim's carnival dance at the Garden of last night that Mr. Krim will put on a similar fair this next Saturday with new features. Some square dances will be put on if wanted. Lennon Curtis and his 4 other jazz artists will provide music. Mr. Krim will spring some more surprises this week. Last week he came from Utica with balloons, squawkers, horns, hats, dolls, confetti, streamers, toys, and other stuff, and everyone had a splendid time. Mrs. Krim served hot coffee and will do the same this week. Everyone is invited to attend. Get your bunch together and go. Another newspaper. The public likes Krim's place. Howell Krim has captured the favor of the dancers, judging by the attendance of the dances. It would be hard to find a better setting for a dancing place. It would be just as difficult to find as attractive a dancing room. And really, Curtis and his players make dancing an excellent floor of joy. Mr. Krim has no competition in this part of the country, but where is there another place like Garden of the Mills? The assembling dancing clubs use the building to practice on Friday nights. Graduations, balls, hops, festivals, lectures, and teas were held there, as were any number of other social functions. A running ad advertised that the hall was available for rent Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on evenings to private parties for dances or fraternal orders. A little bit of trouble occurred as reported on August 8th of 1924. 1924, Prohibition.
Oh.
The Richfield Springs Mercury. Federal officers find Richfield liquor hide. The officers raided the rustic pavilion at the Garden of the Mills, managed by Mr. L. Manning, where alleged liquor was found. Underneath the pavilion, a large stream flows, and directly over this was a drawer in which the liquor was kept. In this drawer, there was a false bottom, and by manipulating a spring, the contents could be made to fall into the stream. On account of the stream being low, the sound of the falling bottles was heard by the federal officers, who immediately made a search and found one unbroken bottle in the stream bed. Mr. Manning was also ordered to appear before the U.S. Commissioner. There were frequent visits during this time period to various hotels and businesses within this area. They weren't the only ones to get listed. At the lake house, it happened all over. October 1924. In compliance with management requests for just one more dance at the garden this fall, Mr. and Mrs. Howell Krim have decided to give another party to which all are welcome. Some of the groups that provided musical entertainment at the garden were local, and some were playing at the hotels. They include Collier's Orchestra, the Serenaders, a group from New Berlin, the Otsego Nighthawks, Lennon Curtis and his orchestra, Dibble's Red Demons, and then Harriet Scott. I wonder if they're called that because it was the Halloween dance. I'm assuming that Dibble's Red Demons would probably be Bud Dibble's orchestra. Bud Dibble often played at the Genesee and stuff like that in Richfield, and later I think he was the manager of the Victory Grocery Store or the A&P, one or the other. And Milton Spielman and his Golden Gate Syncopators. That's such a weird name. A 1928 issue of Variety, Spielman and his orchestra were said to be corking dance combinations that have been in New York, and the resorts dishing forth a lively brand of dance music. Corking. Mrs. Krim was an accomplished musician and was well known in the area for her singing abilities. Mrs. Krim died in 1971, and Howell Krim died in 1959. No matter who was in charge, because consideration to helping others was a priority. It was noted that in 1931, Floyd Curtis, the manager, he suspended the Saturday night dance at the Garden for that week for the purpose of increasing attendance at their entertainment and dance at Bloomfield's for the benefit of the public library. This consideration was much appreciated by the library trustees. Although Richard Montgomery did not hold as much property in the village as he once had, he did not lose interest in the betterment of the village. Oh yeah, now we're back to those other pictures. Yeah. In 1939, he and Myron Jordan and John McGrath led a committee to take steps necessary to bring the project of the Montgomery Bathhouse and Sanatorium to be located in Spring Park to its successful conclusion. Myron Jordan is a local architect from Richfield Springs. He designed the Ilion High School. He designed the municipal buildings in Mohawk. He designed the newer Otsego County building. He designed the school in Richfield Springs. He did a lot. John McGrath, that's where you get Seton McGrath from. The funeral home in Richfield Springs. And James Jordan, who we were talking about earlier, I think. James Jordan is Myron Jordan's son, and James Jordan is also an architect. So anyways, they led a committee to take the steps necessary to bring the project of the Montgomery Bathhouse and Sanatorium to be located in Spring Park to a successful conclusion. Plans were being made for the raising of $5,000 necessary to launch the project by means of a prospectus to be used in selling stock. It was proposed to sell about $150,000 of stock, with an additional $150,000 was expected from government sources. Dr. Schneider, chairman, stated that the sulfur spring at the heart of the village, that the residents of the community should press on to the full development of this natural facility. Dr. Kearns of New York believed so much in this project that he would assume the management or directorship of the institution without salary, relying on his doctor's fees for incomes, staking his present large professional income on the success of an adequate and properly conducted bathhouse and sanitarium here. He pointed out that the rheumatism is a year-round problem, so the bathhouse should be open all year. He stated that thousands of tuberculosis patients go without treatment due to the many overcrowded sanitariums. Next, there's a letter to Dr. Frank. This was the proposed sanitarium. Letter to Dr. Frank. The matter of raising an additional $3,000 for the preliminary expenses of the work was to be put before the village. This would be used for the work of getting the paperwork done with the Reconstruction Finance Corporation in Washington, D.C., and other permits needed. It was a great disappointment to Mr. Montgomery when nothing further was done about his efforts to revitalize the village. In his letter to the editor, published in October of that year, he stated that he could not come to Richfield again, as he had never recovered from the sickness he had the previous spring, and was obliged to conserve his energy. He also stated that it looks as though the delay on the part of the village would necessitate postponement of this project indefinitely. My object in writing on this subject is to inform those members of the village who have so generously supported me in this undertaking. The reason why my plan to do something for Richfield Springs, which would in all probability have restored our village to its former prestige and prosperity. Then came another war, and the economy and interests of community and the world changed drastically. The garden was no longer in active use, and through the ensuing years, the property was sold off to individuals as farmland and building lots. It was truly the end of the opulent living and the tourist interest in the health care of the baths. Tourists lost interest after World War I, World War II. You could get a pill. You didn't need to take a bath. You could take a pill. You could do modern medicine. And they just lost the interest. Richard Malcolm Montgomery died in Manhattan on April 23rd, 1942. After leaving the Richfield area, he and Maud had traveled extensively and purchased a house in Santa Barbara, California. Following his death, Maud returned to her favorite place and made her home in Richfield. Maud McFarland Montgomery died in October of 1951 at the home of Mr. and Mrs. Robert G. Weston in Monticello Street in the village of Richfield Springs, where she had lived since the death of Richard. Both Richard and Maud were members of the Iona Society, devoted largely to the creation of a university in Scotland. While he was president of the society, they were honored with a trip to Scotland. Mrs. Montgomery was active in the cause of women's suffrage and a member of St. John's Church. Both are buried in Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. In 1958, the dangerous curve at what was known as Montgomery's Crossing was in the process of being straightened. The mill was being torn down by the state. Highway crews had to clear the right of way, and when sparks from a nearby bonfire were blown into the tinder frame, a roaring blaze completed their job. Local firemen were on the scene for more than 3 hours to protect the adjacent homes and the Millstone Tavern. No more can you hear the shouts of men and the stomps of horses as wagons pull up to the mill. No more will there be workers who are doing their part for the soldiers of the Civil War. No more will we see the gardens and the waterfalls or hear the music and the gaiety of the thousands who enjoyed the festivities. No more will the quiet and the beauty of this special place inspire artists. No more will people be tripping the light fantastic to the sounds of local musicians. What was is no more. That's it. That was probably